There are two cognitive functions in your mind which are massively important when it comes to fiction writing. In fact, they impact so many aspects of fiction writing that simply knowing about them and which one of them your mind uses can help save years, if not decades, of your time. These two functions determine whether your characters connect to audiences, whether your message gets across, whether you'll be commercially successful, and ultimately whether you reach your writing goals or not. I'm talking about the Jungian cognitive functions of introverted feeling and extraverted feeling. Two things these functions have in common: they're both about investment and values, and they're both lying to you about your chances of success. Therefore, it is massively important to know which one your mind utilizes and how it is lying to you. We'll start by introducing the Jungian cognitive functions of introverted feeling and extraverted feeling. Originally, I wanted this to be a single video in which I compare both cognitive functions, but that would have turned out way too long. So we're going to just focus on introverted feeling in this video and extroverted feeling in the next. Introverted feeling is all about what you like, what you value, and what you are invested in. It is your source of emotional investment. It describes the way that you feel about something. For the sake of your sanity, we'll call these people the convincers. You'll see in a minute why. If you are a convincer, then you can get invested in things really quickly. Fiction writers who are convincers often report how they are in love with their stories and with their ideas and with their vision for the story, and even if others don't feel the same way, their introverted feeling produces enough investment on its own.
So I wrote the first chapter of Knights of the Borrowed Dark, and nobody liked it. They were like, it's too dark, it's too weird, kids won't like this, and I was like, well, I'm gonna write it anyway.
Convincers value their own writing enough. You can easily spot a convincer by asking if they throw away texts or if they keep old versions of their texts and have a really hard time deleting what they've written. We call introverted feeling users convincers because they tend to feel really strongly about something and then they advocate for their values. For instance, by writing a story about what they are so invested in. This is the introverted feeling version of where writers may get their inspiration from. If you recall a couple videos ago when we were talking about introverted sensing and extroverted sensing forms of inspiration, then you might remember that I was talking about two additional forms of inspiration, and one of them comes from introverted feeling. Convincers advocate for something that they really care about. Extroverted feeling, on the other hand, is all about what other people are invested in, how other people feel about something. We call them the supporters because they care about and support other people's values and investments. With high extroverted feeling comes low introverted feeling, and therefore a weaker ability to be invested in yourself and to value yourself. Supporters have therefore low self-esteem almost by default. They support other people's values in order to get those people to value the supporter, because the supporter can't value themselves. And in the same way, they can't value their own stories. We can see this at the example of Stephen King.
I threw it away and my wife fished it out and said, "This is sort of amusing. You ought to go on with this." And so I did.
Is that exactly what she said?
No, it isn't exactly what she said. She said it was really good and she wanted to read. She said she wanted to read the rest of it.
I remember a moment when the only supporter in my writing group was submitting a piece and everybody criticized the beginning section of it. My commentary was that he should elaborate on it and expand it in order to make it better. But he responded with, "But that's the part that everybody hates, so shouldn't I reduce that part or maybe throw it away entirely?" So as you can see, supporters don't have the backs of their own stories. Supporters need to get their investment from other people, as we can see at the examples of Mark Duplass and the legendary Shonda Rhimes.
But every now and then you get an idea that is hard to explain, but it's a feeling-based thing, and you cannot verbalize it well. And if you don't verbalize it correctly, you will watch the eyes of the person you're pitching it to, and they won't be excited, and it will start to kill your own magic. I've lost a lot of them because I took them out before they were ready to be birthed.
For me personally, if I say an idea out loud to somebody, once I've said it out loud, and whatever their facial response is, I know whether or not that's an idea I want to do. And it's instantaneous.
Case in point, even the best of the best still have to get their investment from others if they are supporters, because they don't produce enough emotional investment to care about their own writing. Now let's talk about all the implications these two functions have for writers And let's start with the convincers. Number one, the convincers often get invested in the wrong things. This is such a common mistake for convincers. Instead of being invested in writing, you are invested in the idea of success or the idea of being a writer, and you want to create an awesome story in order to be a writer. You imagine yourself successful and you can't wait to manifest that imagination. And so you take shortcuts and you do everything quick, and you don't even realize that writing isn't fun for you anymore. You may now think that this doesn't apply to you and that you're not falling under that category, but every convincer experiences this at some point. Some of them just grow out of it and accept that they need to stop being invested in the idea of success or the idea of being a writer and start enjoying the process itself. Remember, you are competing with writers who are passionate about writing. If you're not passionate about the writing process itself or about writing itself, then you're not going to make it. That's just the reality of the situation. Introverted feeling is all about emotional investment, which often clashes with reality. Secondly, if you're really invested in the story itself, then that is great, but this can also lead to problems, because what you're really invested in is still not the actual writing experience, but rather the idea of what your story is supposed to be. But as a beginner with less than 10 to 15 years of experience, you still don't have the skill to get it right and make it exactly the way that you picture it in your head. So you keep working on it, you keep fixing it, and you never get anywhere. I'll let Marcus Zuzak explain what happens in this case.
So Marcus, tell me, Bridge of Clay, 13 years to write this book. Why did it take so long?
I think for a long time, I'd always thought of this book as being my best idea. I thought of it when I was 20 years old, which is more than 2 decades ago. And I think when you think of something as your best idea, you've already put pressure on yourself. And so I think I just got a bit over-focused on making every single thing perfect. You know, my favourite moments talking about this book were when people would say to me, if you're having so much trouble with this book, you know, just write one of your other ideas. And I'd say, I haven't got any other ideas.
This is it.
This is it. But now I realise I did have other ideas, but they were all going into this book. It was very much a sense of all or nothing.
This strong capacity for emotional investment can also lead to the creator's curse. Creator's curse describes when you're in the process of creating something and your skill improves as you create it, which enables you to see more flaws than you did before. And you kind of see the amazing thing that your project could be. You fix all those flaws and make the story perfect. But during that process, your skill improves again. So you see new flaws, and so you fix it again, because your investment basically makes you stick to your project and makes you try to make it as perfect as possible. There is a good chance that there are millions of writers out there that are currently stuck in this cycle. The investment they themselves produce for their own story forces them to keep going, and they don't have the awareness or the willpower to get themselves out of it. The cure for that is a piece of advice by Brandon Sanderson.
I don't know, but I'm telling you right now, you should probably approach your writing as you might approach playing the piano. And your first books are learning your scales. I heard early on that your first 5 books are generally crap.
However, this is easy for Brandon Sanderson to say because he, as a supporter, has very low introverted feeling. But for all the convincers out there with their high capacity for investment, including myself, we can't just crap out 5 books because our introverted feeling creates so much investment that we automatically fall in love with everything we write and we hold on to our work despite the negative feedback. We just can't abandon anything.
This can be really hard for some people, knowing that this beautiful thing that you're working on, you have this baby, and you might run into the situation upon writing it that suddenly your baby is ugly.
As a convincer, you need to learn to be able to detach yourself from your investments. If you write the same story for 10 years, you'll become an expert in writing that one story. And then if you should be lucky enough to get a contract with a publisher and they ask you how fast you can write the sequel, what are you going to tell them? See, the point is that you have to gain experience in writing stories. And for that, you need to learn to finish your project and then move on from one project to the next, even though you didn't create the perfect masterpiece that you wanted to create. Like Brandon Sanderson says, the most important product of your writing time is your experience and skill. You need to learn to have responsible investments and not to allow your minds to screw you over by mindlessly pursuing badly placed investments. Be invested in the writing and the story and the characters and know when to move on to the next project. Be like Luke from my writing group. He has the same type as Mark Zuzak, but Luke keeps moving on to the next project, no matter how much he loves his current project. Because Luke knows that that is how you get experience. And he knows that he can always come back a couple years down the line and finish his beloved projects when he has the skill to get them right. Something else you could be invested in is your process. I'm a writer and I know how to write. I don't need advice. I don't need to learn a new process because the way I'm doing it is going to work. I know it. Because if I actually don't have the perfect process, then that means that I've wasted so many years and so much time, and everything I've created during that time is actually bad. And that is certainly not the case. I personally have changed my process several times, and every time it has been a pretty awful experience, because every time I had to admit to myself that I've been doing it wrong all the time, and everything I have been creating during that time was less perfect than I had thought it was. Another problem that convincers have is that they overestimate their stories. We are ourselves convinced of our own ideas and of the stories that we write. And that's fine. Your investment fuels your motivation. However, you often fail to anticipate that other people don't share that investment, and this can lead to heavy miscalculations. Your introverted feeling practically deceives you.
Even after we'd seen the finished film, we were certain it was a blockbuster. We invited everyone we knew to the premiere, even rented out the joint next door for a post-triumph blowout. Get there early, we warned our friends. The place will be mobbed. Nobody showed. There was only one guy in line beside our guests, and he was muttering something about spare change.
As convincers, we tend to feel like we are entitled to success. In other words, introverted feeling comes with a lot of confidence and with the desire to stick out of the crowd and to achieve. And that's why I see a lot more convincers in writing groups than supporters. Usually when there are like 6 people, then 5 of them are convincers who know that they need help and who want advice on their writing. And then there is 1 or 2 supporters who are brave enough to show up, because supporters underestimate themselves constantly. Alright, that's it for the convincers or FI users. I hope this video wasn't too depressing for all my fellow convincers out there. I know it's tough to accept the harsh reality, but the sooner you do that, the sooner you will be able to move yourself onto a path that actually leads to success. And with that being said, I'm going to end it here. The next video will be all about the supporters and how they get deceived by their extroverted feeling. I hope I'll see you then.